That's the phrase that should terrify Indiana Fever fans right now. Working under the assumption, because while everyone is debating whether Kelsey Mitchell stays or goes, there's a bigger question nobody's asking. What happens if the Fever waste Caitlin Clark's rookie contract window by bringing back the wrong players? What happens if they convince themselves that one more year of development will fix the spacing issues and defensive breakdowns that got them bounced in the first round? What happens if 3 years from now, when Clark commands a max contract and the cap flexibility disappears, we look back and realize the championship window closed before it ever really opened? Many of you have been saying this for weeks in the comments. You've been connecting the dots. You've noticed that the front office keeps talking about continuity when they should be talking about fit. You were onto something when you noticed that the same roster construction issues that plagued them all season are being treated like they'll magically fix themselves with more practice time. Let's filter out the noise and look at what the Fever actually need to do this offseason, because the clock is ticking louder than anyone wants to admit. If you believe the story behind the story matters, if you think the Fever's front office decisions deserve the same scrutiny as their on-court performance, smash that like button. It tells us we're on the right track. First player is a backup center, and I think Tina Charles is done. This time, the Fever is probably done. I don't see Tina Charles playing with the Fever again. From being honest, I think Katie Lou Samuelson is not good enough. I just think in general, Victoria Saxton is not good enough. So for me, Elizabeth Williams is a good pickup as a backup center. Elizabeth Williams is 33 years old. She's coming off a disastrous season in Chicago, where the sky imploded spectacularly. But here's what the stats don't show. Angel Reese's defensive rating was actually better with Williams on the floor than with Camila Cardoso. Williams shot near 50% from the field and brought veteran presence to a team that desperately needed it. The question isn't whether she's good enough to be a backup center. The question is whether the Fever can get her close to minimum contract after that Chicago disaster tanked her value. Because if they can, this becomes one of the smartest moves of the offseason. Williams knows how to contribute without needing plays called for her. She plays solid defense. She doesn't force anything, and she won't embarrass you in spot minutes when Aaliyah Boston needs a breather. After the Chicago disaster, her value is at rock bottom. That's when smart teams strike. But Williams is a role player. She's not moving the needle. She's a smart veteran minimum signing, but she doesn't change the Fever's ceiling. The real decision is whether the Fever go after their second target hard enough to actually get her. So the Indiana Fever had a player a couple of years ago that is the perfect player, a much better version of what they need, and it would cost quite a lot of money to keep her. And it's Temi Fagbenle. I still think Temi Fagbenle is the perfect power forward to play beside Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. 2 years ago, the lineup of Caitlin Clark, Lexi Hull, Temi Fagbenle, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell was statistically the best five-player combination in basketball. Then the Fever let Temi walk. She went to Golden State, figured out her jump shot, stayed healthy, and became exactly what Indiana needed at the 4. Now, she's a restricted free agent. The Valkyries have to keep their entire core together on expansion team money, and the Fever have cap space. This isn't complicated math, but it requires the front office to admit they made a mistake letting her go in the first place. And here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. If they flame out on their top option, if they don't go hard enough after Fagbenle and Golden State keeps her, there's a real possibility Natasha Cloud on a near-max contract is coming back. And I don't think you can win a championship with Natasha Cloud starting and Michaela Thompson as her backup. I don't think you can win a championship with that because there are too many games where Natasha Cloud is either brilliant or absolutely terrible. And the problem is, there's no pattern to predict which version shows up. Cloud doesn't play well with Caitlin Clark. The numbers prove it. When they share the floor, spacing collapses, defensive assignments get confused, and the offense stagnates. If the Fever are planning on winning with Caitlin Clark, Bringing back Temi Fagbenle is the move. Either of them can slide to the 4, and Aaliyah can slide to the 4 if she develops the 3 ball. Temi could slide to the 4, obviously, and Sophie can slide up to the 4. So for me, that's your perfect rotation. And you've got Katie Lou Thompson as a player. I'm absolutely fine with those 5 players sharing the 4 or 5 positions, but it's going to cost quite a bit to get Temi out of Golden State. I do think in general that Golden State, because they have to keep basically their whole team, almost their entire team is in free agency, so it's not going to be easy to keep all their players together. If you're Golden State, you're trying to figure out how to pay everyone when you can't possibly afford everyone. And that's where the Fever need to be aggressive. Temi Fagbenle costs 3/4 of a max contract to pull from Golden State. That's expensive for a player who was on Indiana's roster 2 seasons ago. But compare that investment to what happens if they don't make it. Natasha Cloud returns, Michaela Thompson remains the backup, and the Fever run back essentially the same roster that got bounced in the first round. That's not a championship plan. That's hoping things magically improve. The best 5 rotation in the WNBA would be Williams, Fagbenle and Boston rotating at the 4 and 5 with Katie Lou Thompson as the emergency option. That's championship-level depth. That's the kind of front-court rotation that can actually compete with the Aces and Liberty. But it requires spending money now, during Clark's rookie contract window, when the Fever have maximum financial flexibility. Reading between the lines reveals the real tension here. The front office keeps talking about building sustainably, about not overpaying in free agency, about trusting the development process, but sustainable doesn't win championships in a 3-year window. Caitlin Clark is on a rookie contract for 3 more years. That's the championship window. That's the time when you have a generational talent making below-market money, which creates cap space to build a contender around her. The worst possible outcome isn't overpaying for Temi Fagbenle. The worst outcome is bringing back the same roster that got bounced in the first round, convincing themselves that 1 more year of development will fix the spacing issues and defensive breakdowns that plagued them all season. Championship windows are smaller than people think. The Fever have 3 years of Caitlin Clark on a rookie contract, 3 years to build a contender before she commands a max deal, and the cap flexibility disappears. 3 years before other teams figure out how to defend her, 3 years before the league adjusts, 3 years before the window starts closing. So drop a comment right now. Tell me which free agent you think the Fever absolutely cannot afford to miss on. Are you in the Temi Fagbenle camp, or do you think there's a sleeper target that makes more sense? Because this conversation matters, and the front office needs to hear what the fan base actually wants. The third target had a disastrous season for Chicago, an absolute disaster season, but it all depends on whether you believe that this is Betnijah Laney-Hamilton declining or whether you believe that the Chicago Sky is a complete organizational mess. I think it's the latter. I think Betnijah Laney-Hamilton as a bench option is unbelievable, is absolutely unbelievable. I genuinely think Betnijah Laney-Hamilton could be a 6th Player of the Year candidate. She can play the 4, she can play the 3, she shoots incredibly well, and people don't realize that she genuinely could be a game changer. Betnijah Laney-Hamilton averaged 27 points in a win against Dallas last season, 27 points when Chicago desperately needed every single one of them. Then Tyler Marsh benched her. Then she came off the bench inconsistently. Then the entire Sky organization collapsed into dysfunction and chaos. For the Phoenix Mercury before the trade, Laney-Hamilton averaged 7.4 points per game on 36% from 3 and 42% from the field. Those are solid bench numbers. She was a starter on a Connecticut Sun team that nearly made the finals, playing under Stephanie White. The same Stephanie White who's now coaching Indiana. White knows what Laney-Hamilton can do in a functional system. Laney-Hamilton shoots the ball pure when she gets open. That shot is money, and she's fighting to save her WNBA career after the Chicago disaster. That makes her a minimum contract candidate with starter upside. If you look at game logs from the start of the season in Chicago, there were games where she looked like an all-star caliber player. That was the problem with Chicago, the inconsistency. But if you look at games at the start of the year, you can see what she's capable of when the system isn't actively working against her. Stephanie White coached her in Connecticut. White saw her at her best. If White believes she can resurrect Laney-Hamilton's career and they can get her near the minimum, that's a bet worth taking. The risk-reward calculation makes perfect sense. Worst-case scenario, she doesn't pan out and you cut her. Best-case scenario, you just got a former all-star caliber player for minimum money because one disastrous season in a dysfunctional organization tanked her market value. The fourth target is Kennedy Burke. She's coming off a solid season with the New York Liberty, where she played a crucial role as a 3 and D wing. She guards positions 2 through 4. She's much quicker, laterally, than she looks. She did an exceptional job defending Caitlin Clark in their first matchup, and because of that bad playoff series where she struggled, the Fever might get her at a discount rate. It's not going to be easy for New York Liberty to afford to keep their team together, and Kennedy Burke might be one of those players they lose. They might have to pick and choose between players like Kennedy Burke and Leonie Febick. If they want to keep their core together, maybe they choose Febick and say, you know what, we don't need Kennedy Burke. Kennedy Burke is not going to be cheap because I do think she brings a lot of value in that 3 and D role, which is a weirdly uncommon archetype in the WNBA, and it's an archetype that you need. She's a better defender than Betnijah Laney-Hamilton. I'm not saying she's a better shooter overall. She's a better wide-open shooter and more consistent shooter, but she's not a flamethrower. Burke shot 41% from 3 last season on good volume. She guards multiple positions. She's a true 3 and D wing, which is exactly what Indiana needs beside Caitlin Clark. The playoff disaster dropped her value. The Liberty's cap situation makes her available. This is the kind of opportunity that smart front offices exploit. You were onto something when you notice that the Liberty can't keep everyone. They have to make choices, and one team's cap casualty becomes another team's impact addition. The fifth target is Letitia Amahera. She plays hard. She's a dog. She runs hard, jumps, crashes the glass, causes havoc. She doesn't shoot particularly well yet, but she's a much more polished version of Michaela Thompson. She's got length, can guard multiple positions, can switch, can hedge, plays team basketball. The question is whether the Valkyries are excited about bringing her back or whether they prioritize other pieces. If the Fever can get her on a cheap contract, she becomes a utility bench big who can play positions 3 through 5. Put Caitlin Clark beside her, and that athleticism becomes even more valuable in transition. She's raw, but she's athletic and plays with energy. She's the kind of player who can give you quality minutes in specific matchups without needing to be a featured part of the offense. Letitia Amahera is a restricted free agent who probably doesn't cost much. But here's the thing about all of these targets. They're only realistic if the Fever are willing to spend money now, not next year, not when Clark's rookie contract is almost over. Now, this offseason, when they have maximum cap flexibility and the ability to build a championship roster around a generational talent who's making below-market money, the alternative is running it back with Natasha Cloud, hoping the spacing issues magically fix themselves, hoping the defensive breakdowns disappear, hoping that one more year of experience is enough to compete with the Aces and Liberty. That's not a plan. That's hoping, and hope is not a strategy. Connecting the dots reveals the uncomfortable truth here. The Fever are at a crossroads. They can either commit to building a championship roster around Caitlin Clark right now, during her rookie contract window, or they can play it safe, stay under the luxury tax, maintain comfortable profit margins, and waste 3 years of a generational talent's prime. Elizabeth Williams, Temi Fagbenle, Kennedy Burke, Betnijah Laney-Hamilton, Letitia Amahera. 5 realistic targets, 5 players who make the Fever better, 5 players who fit beside Caitlin Clark, and Aaliyah Boston. 5 players who are actually available this offseason. The Fever can afford all of them comfortably if they prioritize winning over saving money. So the question for the Indiana Fever front office is simple. Are you serious about winning a championship, or are you serious about running a comfortable, profitable franchise that makes the playoffs and loses in the first round? Because those are different goals. They require different strategies. They require different levels of financial commitment. In 3 years, when Clark's rookie contract is over and the championship window is closed, nobody's going to remember that they stayed under the luxury tax. They're only going to remember whether they won. So which version of the Indiana Fever shows up this offseason? The version that's serious about building a championship roster around a generational talent, or the version that brings back Natasha Cloud, convinces themselves that continuity matters more than fit, and wastes another year of Caitlin Clark's prime. If you want to see how this free agency period plays out, if you want to know which targets the Fever actually pursue and whether they're serious about winning, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're breaking down every major move, every front office decision, and every missed opportunity this offseason. The next video is going to examine why Kelsey Mitchell's contract situation is more complicated than anyone realizes, and how it could completely reshape Indiana's championship timeline. Let me know in the comments which free agent target you think makes the most sense for the Fever. Are you all in on bringing back Temi Fagbenle? Do you think Kennedy Burke is the safer play, or is there a sleeper candidate we didn't cover that you think could be the difference maker? This is the most important offseason in franchise history, and the decisions they make in the next few weeks will determine whether Caitlin Clark's rookie contract window becomes a championship era or a cautionary tale about wasted potential.